As 2015 comes to an end, it's time to take a look back at the best of this year. We start the ball rolling with the best budget smartphones of 2015. This video will feature 6 devices in total, but oddly only 3 manufacturers. This is something that needs to change for 2016, but let's go ahead and dig in. So I've split this up into 2 categories. Category 1 is from $0 to $250, and Category 2 is $251 to $400. Starting off with the least expensive group from last to first. At number 3 is the Moto E 2nd generation. Starting at $119 for the 3G GSM model and $149 for the LTE model, the Moto E packs in a 4.5-inch QHD display with a Snapdragon 400 processor, 1GB of RAM, and 8GB of built-in memory. However, it does accept micro SD cards to expand that out. It runs a stock version of Android with little touches of Moto Assist throughout the operating system, but for less than $150 for an LTE model, you get a pure vanilla Android experience and a fabulous phone through and through. At number 2 is the Moto G 3rd generation. This device is definitely newer, being announced only in September, but it is a step up for the Moto E with only an extra $30 tacked on the price tag. For $179, you get the larger 5-inch 720p IPS display, a larger 13 megapixel camera that was found on the Nexus 6, a larger 2470 mAh battery, and customization options kind of like Moto Maker with swappable back covers. It's also quite a bit more powerful with a Snapdragon 410 processor, 1 or 2 GB of RAM depending on how much storage you option it with, which comes in at 8 or 16 GB, and you also have a micro SD card slot for expansion, and the last feature to mention is its IPX7 water resistance rating. And at number 1, the best budget smartphone that's $250 or less is the OnePlus X. For $250, you get a 5-inch 1080p AMOLED panel, a beautiful glass and metal construction, a quad-core Snapdragon 801 processor, 3GB of RAM, 16GB of internal storage, and you don't even miss out on microSD card expansion because that's there too. And if you haven't watched my review, you really should. The OnePlus X is definitely the best budget smartphone and definitely does deserve the number 1 spot. Now switching over to the more pricey side of things, but not quite up to snuff with these $700 flagships. At number 3 is the LG constructed Nexus 5X. As you may have seen in our review, we liked the Nexus 5X, but we weren't blown away by it. Its 5.2-inch display was okay, but not fabulous. Its battery life was decent, but the phone and its materials were subpar compared to other devices with its same price range. It's packed with a 6-core Snapdragon 808 processor, 2GB of RAM, and it only came in 16 and 32GB models, and there was no expansion to speak of. Android Imprint is a nice add-on, but the phone doesn't quite feel fully there. Though the perk of running the latest Android software definitely does help the experience, and all in all, the 5X is definitely a great phone, but it's priced about $80 too much, so at $329, it's a tough sale. Number 2 is back to the OnePlus family with the OnePlus 2. For some reason, a lot of people didn't like the OnePlus 2 when it was first launched, though there's definitely a lot to like here. Its beautiful 5.5-inch 1080p display, its great but somewhat slow 13 megapixel camera, its octa-core Snapdragon 810 processor, and 4GB of RAM all offer a tremendous experience. Perhaps the lack of NFC and wireless charging are the 2 largest faults of this device, but for $389, it's one hell of a deal. Another huge misstep in my opinion is the lack of micro SD card slot expansion, which could have been easily implemented where the second SIM card sits. And finally, at number 1 is the Moto X Pure. It's kind of funny how the Moto X Pure didn't overwhelm me when I first received it, but as time went on, I realized how good the Moto X Pure is. Though I still don't understand the need of always getting a bigger phone every year, so it's now holding a massive 5.7-inch Quad HD IPS display, but it's more powerful than before. It's now packing a Snapdragon 808 processor, 3GB of RAM, and 32GB of built-in storage. It also does have a microSD card slot for expansion, and software-wise, it's now running Android 6.0 Marshmallow, which kicks it up right next to the Nexus 6P and the 5X, and it's basically the same version of software, though with some Moto Assist features here and there, and I think they are very helpful. And at $399, it might be right at our limit, but in my opinion, it's completely worth the investment. So that's been our best budget smartphones of 2015. Hope you've enjoyed this video. If so, hit that thumbs up button below and subscribe for more best of 2015 videos and all of our great videos that are coming in 2016. And as always, my name is Marco Hanna, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.